Good morning, everybody. My name is Chris Thorne, and I'm joined here with Fee Hills, and we're back for this week's session on Fit to Change. And this week, we're going to be talking to you about 3 ways that you can implement social learning in your organization. Now, social learning is incredibly powerful. It's proven to retain, people retain knowledge, they build new knowledge. The knowledge sticks, it's fun, we engage people emotionally, mentally, even physically sometimes. And you might think, oh, well, I just need to get people in a room. But actually, there's a lot more to it than that. And today, we're going to unpack for you how we here at MindNudger AI have developed some different ways that we go about implementing social learning so that it becomes truly transformative, not just downloading content, but actually implementing the information. So when we think about how to power up social learning, here at MindNudger AI, we use 3 methods. Sorry, can you go back to my first slide? We use 3 methods here, really. So firstly, we need to ignite change, and we do that via something called the Pop-Up LearningScape, which we're going to dive into a little bit later, but it's a quick experiential activity to bring people together at a deeper level on a core behavior, skill, or concept. Secondly, we need to scale learning across the organization. We do that via what we call shared thinking pods, or a micro think tank, to get people to engage and create new knowledge together. And finally, of course, we need to sustain change. And we've got what we call the peer-to-peer shuffle, which is a great way of getting people to not only be accountable, but also learn to collaborate and even break down silos across your organization. Sorry, next slide, Fee. And if we think about social learning in the AI world, now it's very different to what we think of social learning in the traditional sense, because in the AI world, the key thing is that social learning refers to the capability of machines to learn from observing and interacting with other agents, as in AI agents, but especially humans within their environment. And the key with all of this is that it is the amount of data and the complexity that's involved in social learning in the AI world is very, very different. It requires both humans to manage things, but also the AI to help manage just the sheer volume of data that we need to manage. And when we think about social learning in the AI world, really there's like 4 key components here that we need to think about in relation to this. So obviously, how do we get people to socialize and collaborate via learning platforms and mentors and different models? How do we personalize and adapt that learning so that it becomes not just effective to that user, but also can we get better data, better feedback? How do we make it ethical as well as scalable? Thinking about, some of the content and how we curate that and scale that. And of course, how do we immerse people in those experiential experiences? How do we even translate things? How do we harness the power of gamification? So there's a lot to think about. There's a lot of complexity. Wouldn't you agree, Fee?
Absolutely. So I'm just going to come in here just to sort of almost like support or add to what you just said. What you've just talked about is 4 types of learning that are involved in this, to make it really simple. So one is collaborative learning, which we sort of know in the linear world, collaborative, social learning, that type of thing. And then what we now need is personalized, and we need adaptive. So scalable and experiential. So think about those 4 to memorize them more easily is collaborative, adaptive, scalable, and experiential learning. So we need those 4 things to make this work in the AI world. So to pull off just a couple of things on the socialized collaborative learning, we've got things like collaborative platforms, social interactive analysis, so analytics, virtual mentors and tutors, which we can now have, and of course they can be AI or not, or both, or augmented. Blended learning models, very important. We're not going to talk about that today, but very, very important. We did talk about blending a couple of weeks back. Personalized adaptive learning, we're talking personalized learning experiences, adaptive learning systems, automated even feedback and assessment systems, and in-house analytics. We always go back to analytics with the AI thing. Number 3, ethical and responsible AI use, especially when we're talking about scalable learning. because it's going to get out of hand. More about that later.
Oh, yes.
Scalability. Sorry, Kat. Sorry, Chris.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, you're going to add your genius there. I can't see you.
No,
So
I'm going to keep quiet.
No, you're good. No, interrupt. And anybody else, by the way, please interrupt by putting a comment in or a question. We should say that at the beginning. Got to start saying that at the beginning, Chris. So I keep forgetting that every time. So scalability and accessibility, content curation. So some of these things are already being done, and some of them are really what is needed and not being done in an exponentially changing AI world. Sort of moving into 2025. So at the moment, we're still getting away with not having these things. In the next couple of years, my gut feeling is less so. We won't get away with it. This data. So we're doing curation already. That's sort of not necessarily new. Content curation. Ethical and responsible AI usage is still being worked out. Scalable learning is still not achieved, because obviously we don't get scalable learning just by digital. And experiential learning, again, poor implementation of scalable experiential learning, immersive learning. We're just not seeing it on a mass scale. We're seeing it on the outskirts of, it'll be a nice thing to add to the proper learning, the information. Okay, very poor from what I'm seeing from the research. Role modeling and simulation, that will be more, I think it depends what you're learning in that, to be fair, because it's not always appropriate role modeling, and sometimes it is. So it depends whether it's behavior based and so on. Language translation, and of course, moving forward, we really are going to have to, we are really going to have to move into gamification in the next couple of years, more and more. So whilst we talked about it a lot, it hasn't really happened in reality. So anyway, back to you. Sorry.
Well,
so that took a bit long, that slide.
I was going to say there is so much to think about there. And of course, the key question I think all of us are really concerned about in an AI world is, where do we fit in as humans? Because whilst we want to leverage the power of this technology, we don't want to lose sight of what we as humans create and are as part of that equation. And I just wanted to pick up on something you said, Fee, that humans are vital in shaping, navigating, and enhancing that AI tech-driven learning. Because when human expertise and creative genius meets AI tools, that's when we can build the dynamic workforce ecosystem where we're constantly creating new knowledge, and where workforces are comfortable adapting to the unpredictable forces of exponential change. And if you,
I think a bit heavy for a Monday morning, wasn't it, guys?
And I think exponential change is almost like the sleeping giant, or what do they call the elephant in the room? It's one of those things we may not necessarily identify that we have an issue with change in our organization. I think we're often too quick to look at the symptoms, but it's one of these where we have to address this, and we need to equip people with the skills and knowledge so that they can comfortably take advantage of these disruptions. And AI and social learning is one way that we can do that. Wouldn't you agree, Fee?
I totally agree. Yeah, as you well know, I always agree with Chris. You'll notice that. Chris Farnham, hello, Chris. How you doing? Happy Monday. This is great. Do you feel that AI presents biases? I think everything, not as much as humans. And therefore, how important is it to apply human experience to accurately represent the outcomes? Massively. And hopefully we're moving into that. This augmentation of AI and human, and this weird belief that we can get rid of the human in most things, especially in learning. Forget it, you're not. So I don't know if that answers the question, but I'm hopefully we will. If we don't, Chris, be brutal. Tell us we haven't covered it.
Well,
Good. This is another one. Sorry, one more, Chris, because you might want to deal with it.
Oh, okay.
Is it Leonie? Have I Palmer? Leonie Palmer. Lovely name. Good morning. Is this being recorded? So yeah, all LinkedIn lives are recorded straight automatically. We don't get a say in that. They go automatically to come back to the same link, and you're good to go, basically. Now, there is another. I'm going to come back to the other question in a minute, because we need to move on for the half an hour, really. But God, I lost my train. See what I mean?
Well, but just quickly back to that previous question, I was going to say, absolutely, we need to incorporate the human experience, and that is why experiential learning is so powerful, is because
Massively.
it is how we do that. It is how we incorporate people's experience so that they can make sense of the learning within the context of their own experiences, and yes, even biases, because that's what we need to address if we're going to shift our mindsets and our frames of mind. So absolutely, we definitely need to have human experiences in here. Otherwise, it's meaningless.
Chris, sorry, just very quickly there, because that addresses Chris's very valid question, which is let's not forget that with biases, unfortunately the AI is just representing what we've taught it. So if you look at something like GPT, it's amalgamating data of input. So what you call it in, what you call it out, garbage in, garbage out, definitely applies. So we're always going to put our biases in for sure. So the question is, we're going to move on to that. How do we create new knowledge, and how do we overcome this situation in social learning where there is a huge problem of biases? So great questions. I love it. On the board.
Yeah. Thanks for that.
I'm mindful of time. So learning an AI, right?
ABCs then.
Chris, go on. You're good at ABCs.
Oh, well, fine. So really, if we think, I mean, when you learn your ABCs, that's like learning the foundations. It's learning the fundamentals, if you like, of how to implement something. And when it comes to putting social learning into practice, here at Mind Under AI, our ABCs are built on three elements here. So really, firstly, using the methodologies that are available to us in terms of really making this where it's learner-centered, experiential, utilizing the tool that we have called the concept pyramid, which we've spoken about in previous lives, which is essentially where the AI is taking a frame of mind, if you like, and breaking down all the concepts or thoughts that people would have if they had that frame of mind, and helping people to nudge towards that understanding. And of course, leveraging the tools, because as we said before, just the sheer volume of data and information, and even the complexity of those AI concept pyramids is something that we need to leverage that technology to do. Obviously, how we deliver our social learning is quite key. And for us, we've just said we use these three methods of the pop-ups, the thinking pods, and the peer partnering groups. And they all sort of build on each other, as you saw, where we ignite change, then we're going to move it across the organization, and then we're going to just keep that going. But how we deliver that is core. And of course, with all of this is, how do we facilitate the experience? Because we don't just leave people to it. And we use a blend of course, purely human facilitation, humans supported with a little bit of AI, or just sometimes the AI on its own. And of course, leveraging all that from an analytics point of view.
So yeah, all amazing. So that what Chris has just very nicely done has given us the context to move in the how, right? So the context, the background, and sort of the build up is, in other words, actually Tamara, I won't read the long one out because it's time, we've got this half an hour, but to basically say the question is, how can the human and coach guide a group or organization effectively in this way? So that's hopefully what we're now going to answer along with the other questions. So guys, keep the questions coming. We're going to be here every Monday morning at 9:30, and in fact next week we're doing a mind nudge, so if you miss it,
everybody loves the mind nudges. You won't want to miss that.
Nah, we're doing a reality. This is where the rubber hits the road, right? So yes, let's do the how. So the two things, or the three things, if you like, we figure in social learning in the AI world. And I say in the AI world because we're not talking about the linear world here, and we're not saying everything in the linear world is bad. It's neither bad nor good. We can't throw baby out with the bathwater. We need to bring in the good that and instill it into this new world. But what we're talking about here is essential blocks to social learning and why, and that hopefully will come across now. So the first pillar, if you like, is Pop-Up LearningScapes, and I'll just explain what they are and then we can go back over it. So basically they start with being, anyway, what's called a pop-up session, like it sounds, and these are really social learning sessions. So then they have very little information in them, maybe 5 minutes context in an hour, maybe 5 to 10 minutes overall in total of information, strategy or whatever. So what they're designed to do as a mission of that 60 minutes and the overall LearningScape, which has a bit more on, is teach, embed, and execute, and the execute is really important, a behavior, skill or strategy or technique or whatever it is you're learning in a very micro, measurable, bite-sized bit, right? And we call this a theme. So the theme for us could be a behavior, it could be a skill, it could be a strategy, it could be anything. One theme per pop-up. So we're very, very strict. So you'd end up having a social learning activity which would focus the group to learn socially together. Obviously, you can't do it socially, not apart, in one room, whether it be virtual or in person, doesn't make any difference, right? So 60-minute sessions normally, it can be 45 minutes, it can be half an hour, it could be a very big stretch if it's face-to-face, 90 minutes, but it tends to be about 60, just to sort of top and tail it. So cohort sizes naturally are about 20 to 30 people. But then again, pop-ups could be designed in a very different way to act for 3,000 people. So, but they would be designed experientially very different. So they're learner-centered in their design. They're based on what's called the neuroscience of play. Look up Stuart Brown, look up the neuroscience of play, very important. We designed our own method. It's not new now. It's been going the last decade. EPIC, which is experiential, playful, iterative, collaborative. So that forms the basis of the activity design, the pop-up design. So you can see when I say there's not much information, the information that's offered out in the beginning is purely for context, so that people can go and explore, observe, reflect, adapt, or take action. So the important thing about this social learning is that it doesn't stop in the session. Now, think about what the question, Tamara just asked that question. So how does the coach, I'm not making a difference between facilitator and coach here. For me, it's the same thing. If you're coaching or facilitation, I know there is a slight difference, but some ways it's semantics, because a lot of coaches act as facilitators and vice versa. So if you stop at that with a tiny one bit of behavior, skill or strategy and the theme, then you don't get to compound that over time. So you don't get the benefits of going small and nano and micro, whatever you want to call it. So in micro learning, or in even bite-sized learning, you've got to repeat. So you've got to get that what's called the iterative process, because the benefit of the iterative process is agile growth, like agile learning, like agile change. It's all the same thing. It's iterating and building and growing. So what you get over a certain period of time, if you did 6 LearningScapes, 1 a month for 60 minutes, you've got a massive compound effect of behavior change in 6 months. For a low amount of investment in time. So, wow. But of course, that is facilitated. You can't run a pop-up without a human. They are basically holding the space, they're hosting it. Sorry, am I interrupting you, Chris?
No. I was just thinking about the Outcast inclusion and venture pop-up that we did recently, which is related to our psychological safety journey, and that focused on the theme of belonging, didn't it? Helping people to understand the experience of why it's so important to think about belonging.
It's a good example. It's a good example. Yeah. One single outcome. What's the outcome? I felt the pain. What's the result? I became self-aware. What's the result in that? I'm triggered the next time I go to Outcast or accidentally Outcast, because often outcasting happens
unintentionally. Yes.
Yeah. But so we need to become more self-aware about the pain of that social pain. So that's 60 minutes, bang, you got it. Now, does everybody get it in the room? Well, in any learning, you're going to have let's say here we're looking at 80% hit rate being good, that people not only engage, because naturally more engage into pop-ups because it's learner-centered, meaning so they're the center of the experience. So they're the center of the party, if you like. So it tends to obviously engage. You're not just like now we're just giving you information, and that's fine. You need that too in life. But there comes a time when you want to sort of create new knowledge, and then you need the pop-ups, you need the experiential bit where you put them at the center of the experience. So we have about 300 theme pop-up facilitation library that then tend to get, so the coach or the facilitator would tend to, even if they're in-house or a provider, again, it doesn't matter. What they would tend to do is customize it to their audience, design it how they like it for their sort of unique audience or culture of the organization they're working with. But the fundamental pop-up theme is there to deliver.
Yeah, and of course the learning doesn't stop in the room either, because once they've done the pop-up, we then have an area called the action room, where they would go away and they would put in their intentions or their actions from what they've just experienced in that pop-up, and then they can engage in the shared thinking pods, which Fee's going to tell you about in just a moment, to keep that learning going. So it's not just a one and done. None of the events that we ever do with Mind Nodger are a one and done, because it takes iteration. That's part of the EPIC method, is iterative learning, which is a process of continual learning. And one of the great ways that we do that is keep that going via the shared thinking pods, isn't it, Fee?
Exactly. So I want to move on to the shared thinking pod, because the time we have is about 9 minutes, and I just want to show the new website right at the end. Also say that if anyone wants any slides from here, just DM Chris Thorne or myself, Fee Hills, and we'll send them over. So shared thinking pods. Chris prefers to call them micro think tanks.
Think tanks.
A bit regretful that we didn't do that, but there you go. So
the name might change.
This is architecting shared thinking for new knowledge creation. I can actually speak to this slide for a few hours, because that's how dangerous this whole subject is, of not just shared learning, but, and Chris, now I'm hoping we talk about your points, right? Which is, if you looked at social media, forbid, right, and say, what's the problem with it? Then you'd basically go way further than biases, won't you? You'd go, it's absolute shambles, right?
No one's facilitating it, really.
So what we're in danger of doing, if you're not careful, or we're not careful, is treating shared learning, social learning, as the same way we treat social media, which is I give you a platform, get the right group together, and you will they'll somehow self-organize. And whilst they might self-organize, unfortunately, what Chris says is exactly right. You have got this very dangerous, which we can ease out as humans, which the AI can't, right? Because it's going to learn the biases, right? But we can, by becoming more cognitively aware, more self-aware, less ignorant meaning outside our conscious awareness, from the Latin word to ignore, okay? Which means it's not in our conscious awareness. So if it's not in our conscious awareness, we are going to be biased. Now, those biases somehow have detrimental effects. They don't always, and we do need biases, but it's how we manage those biases. So that's where the human definitely comes in. So within the thinking pods, I'll just tell you what's in it and then explain how it works. So each mind nudging theme that we talked about, the themes, one behavior scale or strategy equals a theme. And then we build everything around that theme, be it a pop-up, be it a mind nudging journey, you get mind nudging themes on a journey and so forth. So each theme is connected to its own little micro think tank, as I'm going to use your language. The facilitator or coach triggers the debate in there, maybe, because they don't always need to. If people have just done a pop-up, they'll go in, they'll naturally talk about, oh, I put my action in the action room and I tried this new behavior out or skill out. And I went in this meeting and it was awful and this happened and didn't quite work out. They go in, people are either going to support them, give them ideas, share learning, right? Share thinking, share insight, share experience. So what could possibly go wrong, right? And if you looked at being our model as social media, then we know exactly what could go wrong. So I'm not going to sort of, egg the pudding anymore. We know what's gone wrong. But so what we need to do with social learning is we need to architect. So if we want new knowledge creation and shared thinking for new knowledge creation, then it needs architect, and we can't leave it as a free-for-all. So we can't give someone a software system or even fueled by AI and say, guys, go and talk about this. Here's a debate and we'll talk about it. But imagine that you have a host there, but not necessarily a guide. And this goes back to Tamara saying, how do we guide? Well, in the shared thinking pods, you shouldn't actually need to over guide, because your guidance and facilitation is for pop-ups, mind nudging journeys, the actual learning. In here, we should actually just need to host and then trigger. But of course, if the humans there, they're going to keep an eye on it and make sure, hey, how's this debate going, right? So the first thing is the trigger. I trigger a debate through thunks, which is like critical thinking. I put a thunk in that's sort of a beguiling question, no right or wrong answer, and it fuels debates, the old way of doing it, which is a great way of doing it. Random act of learning. I might put a random act of learning just to trigger the discussion. But remember, we've already sort of fueled it and triggered it with the mind nudging theme itself.
Yeah.
Well, it's linked to that. It's more likely to happen anyway. But the host is there to make sure it does if there's no engagement. Or gamification is another way. But the important thing here is the architecture. So how do we get people to be more constructive and use higher order thinking skills so that we get to the point of being able to share thinking for higher order, creating new knowledge, and not just sharing old knowledge and old ideas and old beliefs? And that is, we drive higher order conversation. We develop thinking skills. What we had to put is something called intent prompts. What are they? They are basically, you say what you're intending, what you're thinking, what type of thinking is your intent behind your conversation, your comments, sorry, yeah, well done.
Yeah.
So if I wanted to put in a critical thinking thought, I would go critical thinking, add my thought. So why am I doing this? Because if people understand the intent or the thinking, was I trying to be creative? Was I trying to be supportive? Was I trying to be inspirational? Otherwise, there's misunderstanding, misconstruing of messaging. Obviously, it causes conflict, so you want to prevent it. Reduces misunderstanding. The idea is when that goes out the way, this almost obstacles everywhere, we can start to then get into higher order conversation. So you're not adding for higher order conversation, you're actually taking away the impediments that are there in, well, what do you mean by that? Like, well, I didn't understand, blah, 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 that ends up with either bad feeling or worse than that.
Indeed.
So, and the results, of course, are measurable, and we've got 2 minutes left. So again, if people want this, just lastly on this, is a step, we might have to go 2 minutes over if everybody's all right with that. Establish a network of micro think tanks, or shared thinking pods, as we call them. So create a network. You can do this around the organization because you've got AI and because you've got a platform of technology, which then ultimately allows peer partnership to happen. So this peer partner accountability, where you can sort of have a peer partner for a week for accountability, and then we call it the peer partner shuffle. It naturally shuffles you to another peer partner. But in your shared thinking pod, you can do things, try things, peer partner, accountability quite naturally, and shift people around so they're interacting with other people in a very social way. You can't do that without AI.
And great way to build collaboration and networks and connection across your organization and break down silos as well.
Exactly, in a very structured architectural way, meaning they're thinking constructively and they're getting the support they need around them. Now, the result, learning organization. So the goal here, the only goal for most organizations in the 21st century, is to become a learning organization where learning becomes at the center of the actual culture, shall we say. So on that note, over to you when I just share a different screen just to share the website so they can see our new website. Any questions?
Well, really, I mean, becoming an organization, a learning organization has been cited by, you know, many leading leaders. You know, John Hagel, for example, from Deloitte, in terms of it is like the single most important differentiator of becoming strategic and really, to be honest, to survive and thrive in the AI era, because that's the function of organizations has changed significantly.
Exactly. Tamara has actually just asked a question which is really insightful. So I will share it and then we'll move on to this. I just want to share the new website and what you can do. We'll do that in a second. Right. So back to Tamara. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Chris. It's had to have fun. Yeah, nice to meet you, Leonie. Thanks for coming. I was wondering, Tamara, I was wondering how, oh, that's good. I was wondering how the human can help manage cognitive load, as I think this is a risk here. Right, that's good. Any thoughts? Sorry that there isn't much time. I'm a couple of minutes late, but most people who have to leave can leave. It's not a problem. And as I said, it's recorded, so it's quite helpful to do the extra couple of minutes. That's a really, really good question, because we had that question about mind nudging, and what we managed to get around this in terms of cognitive load. All of what we do here is based on experiential learning. It's learner-centered. That's extremely important for cognitive load. It bypasses this. No one has to memorize anything, meaning short-term memory, working memory. You need to get past that, because that's where you've got the overload of information. So where you're teaching information, you've got cognitive overload. Here, you haven't. You're going through experiences, a multitude of experiences, which is effectively, this is the gamification side, bypassing that very slow, conscious, into the, you're bypassing that and hopefully going straight into the long-term memory. Now, the neuroscience of that, we have to get Mike in, Mike Hassani, who's our genius on 41 years in neuroscience and AI.
Yeah, but equally, each of the experiences is a micro learning experience. That's why we focus on just the single skill, frame of mind, behavior, whatever it is at the time, because that's really all we can effectively process and take in.
So in answer to your question, Tamara, the job of the coach and the facilitator in the mission, if you like, of a coach and facilitator, especially in workplaces, I'm talking workplaces here, where they're dealing with quite lots of groups of people, is to guide people through disruptive change. That's their job, if you like, or that's certainly the goal, because you're guiding, you're not telling. And the guidance is navigating. That's why we've called what we do now, the Mind Nudge AI is in fact a workplace mindset navigation platform, because that's what it is. So the facilitator's job is to guide that journey and guide it and make people feel comfortable and take them away from this cognitive load. The moment you give too much information, you're providing overload on cognitive load, because the brain just can't do it, as we well know. So, but it's a good point, because I felt this balance when we were designing mind nudging journeys. What's the balance between pop-ups, which is still 60 minutes, albeit experiential, and mind nudges that they may get, because it can just, and she's saying, I'm just thinking about myself. I think making sure individuals take accountability for managing their own thinking is important. Absolutely. Also, the facilitator can align people to the vision and keep them on the path. Exactly, you've got it. That's it. The job of the facilitator is to be the Sherpa. So if you think you would go up Everest, I always use that as the example, right? Not that I've never been up Everest, right? But don't tell anyone. So you're going up Everest, you've got the Sherpa. You're not going up without a Sherpa, because you wouldn't necessarily, you're almost sure you don't know the way. So who goes up first into Everest? So the Sherpas know, and they navigate and they lead. So that's what your job is now. What the tools do, and all of these sort of cognitive reframing experiences like this, is they help you guide with a tool set. What the AI does is allow you to scale that. So everything is doing a different thing. But remember, it's mindset and behavior transformation we're dealing with here. It's not information-based learning. So I hope that makes sense. So on that note, just a quick show on this, right, guys, which is I've opened up on the facilitation side because that's the bit that might be relevant to you guys, is we've got something called, we've got mind nudging journeys, we've got pop-ups, we've got facilitator section, hold up, and we've got host a hub. So you can open your own mind nudging hub, unique to you. And we provide all the basic journeys, the veins and the pop-ups and things against the World Economic Forum 2030 skills. So that's where we're working towards. You can bring your own information, meaning if you've got any traditional learning that you still want to hold on to, you bring in, and there'll be a content management system. You can just pop it in there in your hub. So that's great. Only first, everybody needs to know how to facilitate mind nudging journeys and pop-ups. So we are offering this now. It's going to be out of date on a record because it's only, this particular thing is only till September, I think September the 15th of that.
12th, September 12th.
There's six 90-minute customized coaching sessions on teaching you how to do all this, right? But it's only available until the 12th of September at $995, and then it goes up to $1995 for the whole package. And then you can host a hub with us. So the new site is mindnudger.ai. So that's mindnudger.ai. I'm going to stop sharing now. And thank you very much. I just want to say thanks to everybody for being here and watching back on the recording. And remember, next week we will be giving you a mind nudge. So it actually can get involved and do a mind nudge with us, because we've done a lot of theory over the last few weeks, haven't we, Chris?
We have, and I think obviously people want a bit of the practical. And when we've done these sessions in the past and taken people through the nudges, in particular, I remember we did a series where we took people through the hero's journey and those nudges involved in the growth mindset, and people loved it, absolutely loved it.
Yeah, that went well. Yeah. So we're going to do that again. We're going to do vibes. We call them vibes because we can't do the mind nudge. You've got to do the mind nudge. But what we can do is sort of hold the space to share that with you next Monday, 9:30. Be there.
Okay.
So Laura said, thank you. You really prompted some great thinking for me here. Well, that's what we want to do in these sessions. So all I can say is thanks to everyone, and thank you, Chris, as well.
Thank you, Fee. We'll see you guys next week.
Thank you very much, guys. Thanks for coming.
Bye.
Bye.